So why am I on disability? I am not on disability pension because of being on the autistic spectrum and being neurodivergent. I have Ehlers-Danlos syndrome and complex health problems, and that is why I can't work. It's not that I don't want to work, it's that I can't. And for a long time, I didn't accept that, and I tried to work. And I can't work in a normal, job setting. I could have probably worked in a job setting that was able to accommodate me. But unfortunately, I've been at the bottom of the barrel and been surviving, and I believe that the stress of that, like, made my health worse, and I know it did, and that sucks because I've been in a vicious cycle where I couldn't work to provide for myself things that I really needed, and the stress of that and everything just got worse. I did try to work earlier on, and I did a lot of, because of my background, which I don't talk about much. I didn't finish school. Things were really rough for me. I wasn't taken care of in the ways that I needed to be taken care of, like a normal teen kid, and so I didn't have a very good start. Part of that was not having an autistic diagnosis, an Asperger's diagnosis, but because that certainly didn't help, because when stress happened in my family, more so, and it, you know, increased, I couldn't focus in my schoolwork the way that I needed to. It already took me a lot of focus, even though I was smart and capable of being academic. I had to focus more on it, so I couldn't do that with all the stuff going on in my life, and I was set up for failure by that. So then I worked in jobs because was only qualified to, do like retail or fast food. I found fast food easier because, especially at McDonald's actually, because it was very structured. But it was still strenuous and stressful and actually inappropriate for me because I had undiagnosed EDS and undiagnosed Asperger's. And I feel that the sensory overload, like the constant stress that I internalized in order to work in those jobs to survive, really made me sick and triggered the autoimmune responses and the dysautonomia, and thus the worsening of the Ehlers-Danlos syndrome that I had an underlying diathesis of already, that I was born with. I was just more prone, and I self-medicated, unfortunately, and a lot of the self-medicating was in order to function, to stifle how I felt so I could function. And it all just shoved it down deep while it actually just festered and came back right at me, came back to bite me in the ass. So that wound me up in a position that I started presenting with mental health stuff, which I actually am certain was part of dysautonomia developing and autoimmune. I knew what that was for me, and they tried to insist, other things, and I knew that's what it was health related, and that's why I was so stubborn about taking psych meds. And it turns out that I was right, because it did progress into illness. And, long story short, I'm a larger than life person. I do like being busy, and I would have preferred to be out there, but doing something that I love more. And, the fashion retail was fun. It was artistic and fun. It was fun to help people put together outfits. But paradoxically, it was very stressful because I could only handle, even though I'm kind of socially motivated, could only handle a certain amount of socializing because it doesn't come naturally to me. And so it would really drain me. And then I would get into a cycle where I'd come home and basically drink alcohol to, like, um, let loose, loosen up and relax, because I was so wound up and overstimulated and in a fair bit of pain, which I didn't realize wasn't normal at the time. So, I mean, years on end of this did me damage, and it did me damage because I always did have EDS, and it was like a milder to moderate form, but it's turned into a severe thing and expressing itself in an ugly, severe way today, to a point where I can barely manage getting on top of this and recovering, because I was totally the opposite of accommodated. I did lots of things that were harmful and inappropriate for my body type and my brain type. I had to survive, and I had to earn, and I had to do. I didn't have, yes, I do envy people that have supportive, financially secure parents, supportive, not also challenged, financially secure spouses. Yes, I mean, I can't lie and say that I don't envy people like that. People have no idea how disadvantaged I've been. They just look at my precocities and my sort of talents that I present on the internet and go, "Oh yeah, she hasn't made," and it's like, dude, nope. Um, and like I said in the gaslighting video, I could have taken the easy way out if I wanted to. There were a couple of occasions where, I was approached by like sugar daddy types, and I couldn't do that and live that lifestyle and go with them because I felt so dishonest about it. And that was my chance out if I had been someone who didn't give a shit and about, what they were doing. And I couldn't do that because I just felt dishonest. I was too honest and too genuine, and I still am. I wouldn't do that now. I can't work today. I did work. I started working when I was actually 14 with a double paper route to try and buy groceries for our house. My mom was getting sick with leukemia, and my dad wasn't around at that time. And I don't want to really go on right now at this stage about my personal life and background. People have really no idea um, what went on because I haven't shared about it. People think they know me. But anyway, I was hurt so badly over those times because I was so smart in an intellectual way that people didn't realize how very young I was and naive I was inside. And I walked into several situations where I got hurt. Eventually, when I was 19, becoming a train wreck in the face of addiction and partying because I'd never had an adolescence, and I had a major regression that I barely survived. And then I got out of that and got married and had kids, but I started to fall ill, and yeah, I always wondered if I damaged myself. And but I worked my butt off from a young age, and I then I kind of regressed, and later had a hard time, and then came back from that only to be sick, only to start becoming sick. And so I've never had like a sense of normalcy in terms of my setup. I didn't have like all the support and backing behind me. I didn't have an Asperger's diagnosis. I was such a smart kid in school. I had so much potential, but the workload and my organization was poor, and I struggled very badly with that. And they always thought that it was me having some kind of attitude problem or me being just a lazy procrastinator, which was ridiculous. It was clear to the teachers that the ways I was coping, like obsessively counting calories and being like inflexible about my schoolwork, like all or nothing. Like they should have noted that those could have been signs of female Asperger's syndrome, and they didn't note that and help me in ways that they should have, even though when I look back, it actually was pretty obvious. Um, it's obvious in my poetry at that time. I had kept a poetry book that I actually added my best poems from when I was a teen to Heart of a Woman Child, my poetry book. That's also a poetry blog online. And when I read that poetry, I can see the Aspie right away. And I was a kid that was, in a rough situation at home, low income, needed help, and I didn't get that help. And I figured out how to help myself at great expense to my body, to a body that already had an underlying Ehlers-Danlos diathesis syndrome. Since I was a kid, I'd always had problems with stamina. I get tired more easily. I was always hurting. My skeleton hurt all the time. If I moved too abruptly or whatever, I'd injure. I'd strain and sprain and pop in and out. And I just didn't realize it wasn't normal. And I didn't realize having to think about socializing and planning it out and literally scripting in private and taking pacey walks to process my social interactions. I didn't realize that was part of Asperger's, and I didn't realize that the physical stuff was part of EDS. So I fell through the cracks hardcore, and that's why I can't work today. It's not because I don't want to work. And anyone who calls me lazy, I mean, if this wrist wouldn't fall apart, like I wouldn't actually punch them. But I just feel like shaking them and being like, you don't know me. You have no idea. But if I just had the Asperger's piece, like I would have, I would be working. I would be going to this service over up the street actually that helps people on the spectrum, places them in jobs that you know that can accommodate them and that they can do based on their strengths profile. I would do that. It's because I'm so sick that I'm not doing it and not able to. And so I still do work, because I'm kind of workaholic-ish, and so I even do work in bed and need to have purpose. And with my music, that's the kind of work that I absolutely adore. But it's definitely work, putting the songs together and composing and practicing. Singing now takes a lot of exertion out of me because I'm so fragile with the stupid dysautonomia. I'm so compromised today and it hurts. I want to regain some of my functioning. I feel like I've just fallen apart physically compared to, and the reason why is because I just pushed too hard. And so today it's impossible for me to work at a job, and I wish it wasn't like that. I was just on the autistic spectrum, I'd be working. That's not the reason. The reason is my health. That's why I'm on disability. But I want to find a way out. I want solutions that bring justice and peace and happiness and restore hope. I don't know how to explain that, but any better than I have, I guess.